"Sold for meat, human, hold me, use me, just get me out of here," she whispered. The station was called Karnath Exchange Hub, and officially it was clean. Every wall shined with soft silver light. Every corridor smelled faintly of recycled air and neutral chemicals. Screens floated above walkways, showing prices, schedules, and legal notices in dozens of languages. To most species in the galaxy, Karnath was proof that civilization had succeeded. To humans, it felt wrong. Elias Moore stood still at the edge of the main trading floor, his hands folded behind his back, his eyes moving slowly from one section to another. He wore a plain human trade uniform, gray, simple, without symbols. Humans did not decorate themselves much in space. They preferred function over display. Around him, species of all shapes and sizes moved with purpose. Tall insect-like traders clicked softly as they spoke. Smooth-skinned aquatic beings floated in hovering tanks. Thin, long-limbed aliens with glassy eyes scanned data pads without emotion. No one looked uncomfortable. That was the problem. Elias was not here to shop. He was a logistics auditor sent by the Terran Trade Council. Humanity was still new to the wider galactic network, and their job, for now, was small. Observe, learn, make sure trade routes followed agreements. Humans had signed many agreements, especially one, the Sapient Protection Accord. According to the accord, no thinking being could be sold, owned, or classified as livestock. Every species in the Council had agreed. They had celebrated it. They had praised it as a great moral achievement. Elias had believed it, at first. He activated his wrist display and reviewed the shipment list again. Cargo containers, biological units, protein stock, genetic material, labor organisms. His eyes paused on one line. Category, consumable biological asset. He tapped the line, opening the deeper file. There were measurements, chemical readings, neural density charts, enough data to look scientific, enough to confuse anyone who didn't look too closely. Elias looked closely. The neural complexity was high, too high. His stomach tightened. He glanced around. No alarms, no concern. Traders walked past him carrying samples, laughing in their own alien ways. To them, this was normal. He flagged the file for review. A notification appeared almost instantly. Request DENIED, category compliant. Elias exhaled slowly. "Of course it is," he said quietly. Humans had learned something very quickly after joining the galactic community. If something was wrong, it was usually legal. He started walking. The holding sectors were not on public maps, but auditors were given access keys. His badge opened a side corridor, and the noise of the trading floor faded behind him. The lights dimmed. The walls lost their polish. This part of the station was functional, not impressive. Cold. Each door along the corridor was marked with symbols instead of names. Biological containment, environmental adjustment, quarantine, storage. Elias stopped in front of a door marked CB417. His wrist display pulsed. Warning, restricted biological goods. The air was warmer here, adjusted for organic life. A transparent containment field stood in the center, shaped like a cube. And inside it, sitting on the floor, was a woman. She was not human, but she was close enough that Elias' chest tightened instantly. She had 2 arms. 2 legs, a head with expressive eyes, skin a pale shade of blue-gray, dark hair that hung loosely around her shoulders. She was thin, her frame too light for an adult, her posture tight and defensive. She looked up when the door opened. Her eyes widened, not with hope. With fear, she scrambled backward until her back hit the containment wall. Her hands came up in front of her face, shaking. Elias froze. He had seen many alien species before. Some looked nothing like humans. Some were beautiful in strange ways. Some were unsettling. This woman looked familiar, too familiar. "I'm not here to buy," Elias said quickly, holding his hands up even though there was a barrier between them. "I'm a trade auditor. I just need to ask a few questions." She stared at him, breathing fast. Her gaze flicked to his uniform. Human, she swallowed. "Please," she said, her voice quiet, rough from disuse. "If you are a buyer, just don't." Elias felt something twist hard in his chest. "I'm not," he said again, softer now. "I promise." She hesitated. Slowly, she lowered her hands. Only then did Elias notice the small metal band around her ankle glowing faintly. A tracking and compliance device. Standard for livestock, not for people. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked confused. "Name," she repeated. "Yes," he said. "What do people call you?" Her lips parted, then closed. She shook her head. They took it, she said. Names are not useful for trade. Elias clenched his jaw. Where are you from? He asked. She hesitated again, then pointed weakly upward. Outer systems, small world, no council seat. That explained a lot. Species without representation were vulnerable. Humans knew that story well. Their own history was full of it. How long have you been here? Elias asked. She laughed softly, a broken sound. Time is not important here, she said. Only condition, wait. Compliance. Elias looked at the data hovering on his wrist. Cognitive rating below sapience threshold. He looked back at her. She met his eyes. No animal did that. What are they going to do with you? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. Her shoulders trembled. She hugged her knees to her chest. Sold, she said. Processed, eaten, used. Elias felt sick. They said we are meat, she continued quietly. They said we think only in simple ways, that we feel fear but not understanding. Her voice cracked. I understand, she whispered. Silence filled the room. Elias closed his eyes for a brief moment. This was not a battlefield, no weapons, no shouting, no blood. And yet it felt worse than any war story he had ever read. He opened his eyes. Listen to me, he said. I don't know yet how, but this is not going to continue. She looked at him with disbelief. Humans are small, she said. They told us that. You are new. You cannot change trade. Elias gave a humorless smile. They say that about us a lot. He stepped closer to the containment field, careful not to startle her. What is your species called? He asked. She hesitated. Then slowly she spoke a word that did not translate cleanly into his system. The display struggled, then approximated it. Approximate meaning. Those who remember. Elias nodded. That's a good name, he said. She stared at him, confused again. No one has said that before. He glanced at the tracking band again. Have you been sold already? He asked. She nodded. Yes, final transfer soon. When? She looked down. Today. Something cold settled in Elias' gut. He straightened. Okay, he said. Then we don't have much time. She laughed weakly. You speak like someone with power. I don't have power, Elias said honestly, but I have access. She tilted her head. To weapons, to records, he said. She didn't understand. No one ever did at first. Elias stepped back and activated his wrist display fully. He began recording audio, visual, neural pattern sampling, consent confirmation. What are you doing? She asked, alarmed. Documenting, he said, with your permission. Permission? She echoed. Yes, he said firmly. You matter enough for that. She stared at him for a long moment, then she nodded. Yes, she said, please. The recording light blinked green. Elias spoke clearly. This is Elias Moore, Terran Trade Auditor. I'm recording a live sapience assessment. Subject demonstrates self-awareness, abstract reasoning, emotional understanding, and fear of future outcomes. He turned the display toward her. Tell me, he said gently, what do you want? She hesitated, then in a voice barely above a whisper, she said the words that would follow him for the rest of his life. Sold for meat, human, hold me, use me, just get me out of here. Elias felt his throat tighten. I won't own you, he said immediately. I won't use you. Her eyes filled with tears. Then why help? She asked. He met her gaze. Because no one should have to beg to be recognized as alive. The station announcement chimed softly overhead. Notice, biological asset CB-417 scheduled for transfer in 2 hours. Elias saved the recording. 2 hours, it wasn't much, but humans had changed history with less. He turned toward the door. Wait, she said quickly, fear returning. You're leaving? I'm going to make the galaxy very uncomfortable, he replied. For the first time since he entered the room, she smiled, just a little. And that was how it began. Elias Moore did not rush. That surprised everyone who saw him. When he stepped out of holding sector CB-417, the corridor was quiet, almost empty. A few station workers moved crates along rails. A tall, insect-like overseer glanced at him and then looked away, uninterested. Elias walked at a normal pace. Inside his chest, his heart was racing. Humans had learned a long time ago that panic was loud, calm was dangerous. His wrist display glowed softly as he moved. The recording from the holding cell was already uploading to multiple secure Terran servers, backup after backup. Elias had learned never to trust a single copy of the truth. Truth had a habit of disappearing. He reached a junction and turned toward the administrative spine, the center of station control. That was where audits were processed, complaints logged, and most importantly, where trade legality was confirmed. If the system had allowed a thinking being to be sold as meat, then the system itself was the enemy. and Elias intended to use it against itself. The language of loopholes administrator Velrix was not worried. Velrix never worried. As a senior compliance officer of the Karnath Exchange Hub, Velrix had reviewed thousands of audits over the years. Disputes, delays, cultural misunderstandings. New species always complained, especially humans. Humans asked too many questions. They had emotions tied to ideas. Ideas tied to morality, morality tied to inconvenience, but they were small players, weak fleets, limited influence, easy to manage. So when Elias Moore entered Velrix's office, Velrix barely looked up. "Yes," Velrix said in clipped trade standard. "State your request." Elias stood straight. "I am issuing a formal sapience challenge," he said. That got Velrix's attention. The administrator's 4 eyes focused on him. "On what asset?" "CB-417, Elias replied calmly. Velrix's mandibles clicked once in irritation. "That classification has already been approved. Cognitive rating is below threshold." "I disagree," Elias said. "You are not certified to." "I am certified," Elias interrupted, still polite, "to trigger a cross-jurisdictional review under Article 12 of the Sapient Protection Accord." Velrix froze. Article 12 was old, rarely used. It allowed any member species to demand review if they believed sapience was being misclassified, even without proof if there was credible testimony. Most species never used it. Humans did. Velrix leaned back slowly. "This will delay trade." "Yes," Elias said. "It will cost the station credits." "Yes." "It will anger private buyers." "Yes." Velrix stared at him. "Why do humans insist on making things difficult?" Elias met the administrator's gaze. "Because sometimes difficult is the only moral option." Velrix exhaled sharply. "Very well, the review will begin. But understand this, human. If the classification holds, your species will lose credibility." Elias nodded. "We're used to that." A voice that was never meant to be heard, the review chamber was sterile and cold. The woman from CB-417 was brought in, escorted by hovering drones. The containment field remained around her, but its opacity was reduced. For the first time since her capture, she could see more than a cell. She saw Elias standing nearby. Her shoulders loosened slightly. Observers filled the chamber, representatives from several trading species. None of them looked directly at her for long. To them, she was data, not a person. Velrix began the proceedings. "This asset has been classified as non-sapient under current metrics," Velrix said. "The human representative disputes this classification. Evidence will be reviewed." Elias stepped forward. "With respect," he said, "I request the subject be allowed to speak." A ripple of discomfort passed through the chamber. Velrix clicked its mandibles again. "Speech alone does not prove sapience." "No," Elias agreed, "but refusing to listen proves something else." There was a pause, then Velrix nodded once. "Proceed." The containment field softened, not removed, just lowered enough for sound to pass freely. The woman looked around, eyes wide. "You may speak freely," Elias said gently. "No punishment will follow," she swallowed. "My people are called those who remember," she began slowly. "We record our history in stories, not machines. We teach our children through memory." Several observers exchanged looks. She continued, gaining strength. "When the traders came, they tested us. They asked us to solve puzzles that meant nothing to our world. When we failed, they said we were animals." Her hands trembled, but her voice did not stop. "They did not ask us about love, about loss, about choice. They did not ask what we fear becoming." Silence filled the room. Velrix shifted. Elias activated his display and projected data. Neural patterns, linguistic complexity, emotional markers. "She demonstrates abstract thought," Elias said, "future planning, self-identity, cultural continuity." "That data can be simulated," an observer said. Elias nodded. "So can intelligence. That doesn't mean it isn't real." The problem with human questions, the review dragged on. Hours passed, questions were asked, metrics debated, definitions argued. Humans had a habit of asking why instead of how much. That alone made the process unbearable for most species. At one point, Velrix turned to Elias. "Even if this being is sapient, why involve yourself?" "You gain nothing," Elias answered without hesitation. "Wrong," he said. "We gain precedent." Velrix did not like that word. Precedent meant repetition. It meant others might try this. It meant the market could not quietly continue. Meanwhile, in the holding sector. Back in CB-417, the holding cells were restless. Other biological assets sensed delay. Delay meant uncertainty. Uncertainty meant fear. The woman sat quietly now, her mind racing. No one had ever spoken for her before. No one had asked her to explain herself. She did not know if it would work, but for the first time since her capture, she felt something unfamiliar: possibility. The galaxy notices the moment the Sapiens challenge was logged. Automated notices spread to buyers, to regulators, to trade guilds, and to Earth. Terran officials watched the feed in stunned silence. "This could get ugly," one advisor said. Another shook their head. "No, this is exactly what we signed up for." Humans had not joined the galaxy to conquer it. They had joined to understand it. And now they understood something deeply wrong. The decision is delayed. After hours of debate, Velrix raised all four hands. "This review will require extended analysis," Velrix announced. "Asset transfer is suspended until a final ruling." The woman gasped softly. Elias exhaled. It wasn't freedom, but it wasn't death, not today. Velrix turned to Elias. "This is not a victory, human." Elias nodded. "I know. It is merely a pause." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "Sometimes," he said, "a pause is all humanity needs," a quiet promise. Later, Elias stood outside the holding area again. The woman looked at him through the softened field. "They did not decide," she said. "No," Elias replied, "but they didn't say no either." She studied his face. "Why do you look tired?" Elias laughed softly. "Because systems don't like being questioned." She hesitated. "Will they punish you?" "Probably," he said honestly. She lowered her head. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Elias said. "This is the easiest choice I've made in years." She stepped closer to the field. "If I am freed," she said quietly, "what then?" Elias thought for a moment. "Then you get to choose," he said, "and that terrifies the galaxy." The station lights dimmed slightly as the cycle shifted. Outside, trade slowed. Inside, something had changed. The system had noticed humans, and it did not like what it saw. The galaxy did not like delays. Delays cost money. Delays caused questions. Questions caused attention, and attention was dangerous. Within 12 hours of the Sapiens challenge being filed, Karnath Exchange Hub felt different. The corridors were louder. Officials walked faster. Private buyers argued openly with administrators. Messages flooded the station network. Elias Moore felt it in the air. Pressure. The system was waking up. A human problem. Administrator Velrix stood before a wall of floating data panels, mandibles clicking in frustration. Every panel showed the same issue in different forms. Trade halted. Buyers demanding refunds. Oversight councils requesting explanations. Terran auditors requesting full access, all because of one human. "Why?" Velrix muttered. "Do humans always pull threads instead of stepping around them?" Another administrator answered quietly, "Because they believe threads matter." Velrix closed several panels with a sharp motion. "The asset should never have reached this stage," Velrix said. "Why was it classified below sapience?" A junior analyst shifted nervously. "The tests were standard." Velrix turned slowly. "Standard for whom?" The analyst had no answer. That was the real danger. Humans were forcing the station to look at questions no one wanted to ask. The offer Elias was called to a private meeting room. That alone was a warning sign. The room was comfortable, too comfortable. Soft lighting. Temperature adjusted for humans, a courtesy gesture. Velrix entered moments later. "Sit," Velrix said. Elias sat. "This situation has attracted attention," Velrix began. "Unwanted attention." "I imagine it has," Elias replied calmly. Velrix leaned forward. "We are willing to compromise." Elias raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "The asset will be sold to a non-consumptive buyer," Velrix said. "Labor classification, private ownership, removed from food processing." Elias shook his head immediately. "No," Velrix stiffened. "This is generous." "It's still ownership," Elias said. "Still slavery." "That word is meaningless here," Velrix snapped. Elias leaned forward slightly. "It's not meaningless to humans." Silence followed. Velrix spoke again, slower this time. "If you continue, the ruling may go against you. The asset may still be processed. You will have accomplished nothing." Elias met all four of Velrix's eyes. "If I stop," he said, "then I guarantee nothing changes." Velrix studied him. "You would risk everything for one being." Elias answered without hesitation. "Yes." The one who waited in the holding sector, the woman waited. She had learned how waiting worked here. Waiting meant fear stretched over time, but this time was different. This time she was not alone. Station workers avoided her cell now. Some looked uncomfortable, others angry. A few looked afraid. She realized something important. The humans had changed how others saw her, not as meat, as a problem, and problems were harder to erase. The council watches on Earth, the Terran Trade Council chamber was quiet. Too quiet, screens displayed live feeds from Karnath. Legal documents scrolled endlessly. Advisors whispered. "He's pushing too far," one official said. "We don't have the influence yet." Another replied, "Influence isn't given, it's taken." The chairperson spoke at last. "Elias Moore represents humanity exactly as intended." The room fell silent. "We signed the accord," the chairperson continued. "If it fails now, it fails forever. Support him." Orders were sent, legal teams mobilized, observers dispatched. The galaxy was about to learn something important. Humans did not retreat when cornered. They documented. Definitions become weapons, the extended review resumed. This time, more observers attended. Some appeared via hologram, others joined reluctantly. Elias presented new material. "Language alone is not the measure of sapience," he said. "Culture is, memory is, moral reasoning is." He turned to the woman. "Tell them about the choice you made," he said gently. She hesitated, then spoke. "When the traders first came," she said, "they offered safety in exchange for cooperation. Some of us agreed, some did not." Her voice was steady. "I chose not to run," she continued. "I stayed behind so the children could escape." The chamber fell silent. "That is sacrifice," Elias said quietly. "Animals do not make moral choices," one observer protested. "Some animals protect their young." "Yes," Elias agreed, "but they do not understand why." The woman looked directly at the observers. "I knew I would be taken," she said. "I knew what that meant. I chose it anyway." No metric could measure that. The crack appears Administrator Velrix reviewed the incoming data again. Neural scans showed consistency. Behavioral responses showed depth. Emotional responses were complex. The system flagged inconsistencies. For the first time, Velrix felt something unfamiliar, doubt. "If we rule this being sapient," Velrix said aloud, "we must review others." That was the real threat. One human question could unravel entire markets. Retaliation without violence. The station responded the only way it knew how. Bureaucracy. Elias' access was restricted, his movements monitored, his authority questioned. He was buried under requests, forms, clarifications, and procedural delays. Classic system defense. Elias worked through them all. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He answered everything. Humans were very good at paperwork. They had centuries of practice. A private moment late in the cycle, Elias returned to the holding sector. The woman looked up as he approached. "You look tired," she said again. He smiled weakly. "I am." "Why don't you stop?" she asked softly. Elias considered the question. "Because if I stop," he said, "the system learns that pressure works." She stepped closer to the containment field. "My people say that memory is resistance," she said. Elias nodded. "Humans believe something similar." She tilted her head. "What do you believe?" "That once a system is forced to see you," he said, "it can never fully unsee you." The first shift. The preliminary findings were released. Not a final ruling, but something new. Status update, sapience classification inconclusive. Action required, moratorium on consumptive trade of disputed species. The markets reacted instantly, prices fluctuated, contracts froze. Buyers panicked, traders complained, but no one could legally proceed. For the first time in Karnath's history, a category of livestock was protected, temporarily, but temporarily was enough. Fear changes shape. Administrator Velrix stared at the update notice. This was worse than a loss. This was uncertainty. "Humans," Velrix whispered, "are dangerous. Not because they fought, because they stayed. The woman is no longer alone. Other holding cells activated nearby. Voices whispered. Questions formed. The woman realized something startling. Others like her were listening, learning, hoping. She placed a hand against the containment field. Elias mirrored the gesture from outside. They did not touch. They did not need to. The station announcement chimed. "Notice all consumptive transfers suspended pending classification review." The words echoed through Karnath. And through the galaxy. The galaxy reacted the way it always did when comfort was threatened. With anger. Across Karnath Exchange Hub, trade terminals flashed warning colors. Contracts were locked. Buyers demanded compensation. Traders argued loudly in public corridors, no longer caring who heard them. Entire markets depended on the consumptive trade. And now, because of one human and one voice that refused to stay silent, everything was frozen. When profit panics, Administrator Velric stood before the Grand Compliance Board, surrounded by holographic representatives from dozens of systems. "This moratorium is unacceptable," one representative hissed. "Our economies rely on these classifications," another snapped. "You are allowing sentiment to disrupt order," said a third. Velrix raised all four hands. "This disruption began with a single challenge," Velrix said. "From the human." Many eyes turned toward the small human figure standing calmly at the edge of the chamber. Elias Moore did not speak. He did not need to. The data spoke for him. Neural scans, testimonies, cultural records, recorded consent, recorded fear. Recorded understanding. The problem was no longer whether the woman was sapient. The problem was what that meant for everyone else. The question no one wanted a senior trade lord finally asked it. "If this being is sapient," the trade lord said slowly, "how many others have we misclassified?" Silence followed. Elias stepped forward. "All of them deserve review," he said simply. The reaction was immediate. "That would collapse entire industries," someone shouted. "Yes," Elias agreed. "That is not reasonable." "No," Elias said again, "it's necessary." The threat Velrix requested a private recess. Inside a sealed chamber, Velrix faced Elias alone. "You have made your point," Velrix said. "Now stop." Elias shook his head. "You will lose support," Velrix warned. "Your species will be isolated." Elias met the administrator's gaze. "Humans survived isolation long before we reached the stars." Velrix leaned closer. "You could walk away now. The asset could be quietly reassigned." "No one would blame you." Elias' voice hardened. "She is not an asset." Velrix recoiled slightly. "That word," Velrix said, "is your weakness." "No," Elias replied, "it's our line." A choice offered later that cycle. Elias was summoned again. This time the offer was official. The woman would be released into human custody, one being. In exchange, humanity would withdraw support for broader review, a clean trade, a quiet fix. Elias read the proposal carefully, then he deleted it. "No," he said. The officials stared at him in disbelief. "You are choosing ideology over lives," one accused. Elias shook his head. "I am choosing all lives over one convenient exception." The woman learns the truth. Elias went to the holding sector one last time before the ruling. He stood outside the containment field. "They offered to give you to us," he said gently. Her eyes widened. "You refused," she said, not a question. "Yes." She was silent for a long time, then she said, "On my world, leaders choose one village to save the rest." Elias nodded. "We've done that too." "Why not now?" she asked. Elias looked at her carefully. "Because if freedom is a gift given quietly," he said, "it can be taken quietly too." She lowered her head. "I am afraid," she admitted. "So am I," Elias said. They stood there together, fear shared but not alone. The galaxy draws a line. The final council session was broadcast across trade space. Never before had a sapience ruling drawn so many viewers. Velrix announced the conclusion. "The subject CB-417 is hereby classified as sapient." Gasps echoed, but Velrix was not finished. "This ruling requires retrospective analysis of similar classifications." Chaos followed, shouting, objections, threats of withdrawal. Velrix raised their voice. "Silence, this is law." The markets trembled. The consequences began. Within hours, dozens of stations halted similar trades. Not because they agreed, because they were afraid of humans watching. Human auditors arrived everywhere, quiet, calm, relentless. They did not shout. They requested documentation. And systems everywhere began to fail under scrutiny. The woman walks free. The containment field dropped. For the first time in many cycles, the woman stepped forward without a barrier. Her legs shook. Elias did not move. He waited. She crossed the room and stopped in front of him. "You kept your word," she said. "You're free," Elias replied. She looked around the station. "No," she said softly, "I am recognized." A new fear. Administrator Velrix watched from afar. Humans had not attacked. They had not demanded dominance. They had done something far worse. They had changed definitions, and definitions shaped reality. Velrix understood now. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong. They were dangerous because they refused to accept that this is how it has always been. The galaxy adjusts. Trade did not stop. It adapted, slowly, painfully. Some markets collapsed, others evolved, new agreements formed. And everywhere, a new warning spread through whispers and contracts alike. If humans ask questions, answer carefully. A quiet ending to a loud cycle. Elias stood at the docking bay as the woman prepared to leave with a Terran delegation. What will you do now? He asked. She considered. Remember, she said, and make sure others are not forgotten. Elias smiled. That's a very human answer, she smiled back. Then perhaps, she said, your danger is contagious. The ship doors closed, the station lights dimmed. And across the galaxy, systems realized something terrifying. Humanity had arrived.